Hello, hello. We're going to continue with our journal making today, and there's a couple of things that I'm going to show you. I've been asked actually several times to show how to repair a spine. Now I showed how I got a book, and I picked up I think I got five of these books. They're only from like 2000. They're not really old. They're, you know, they're older than my couple of my children, but they're not really old. But I really love these covers. So I decided, instead of using one of the really old books, although I have started to repair the spine on one of them, I'm going to use these. So a lot of people have asked, when you got the book, often you'll cut through part of the spine, and I've been asked how to repair that. So this is it's not just a repair. You can do this kind of cover just as a journal cover, which I really like. So I thought I'd do a couple like this, and I'm going to leave a couple and put the little Tim Holtz dangly bracket things on them, and I'm also going to show you how to reinforce the inside. Now, some of this I couldn't actually do on camera for two reasons. One, because I had to use an iron, and secondly, I'm not very good with an iron. My idea of clothing is if it needs ironing, I don't want it. But mainly I have to iron it on my kitchen worktop, and I've got nowhere to set up a camera in there, so I'm going to have to just explain what I do for the most part. So what I do is I take my tea-dyed calico. I've also used canvas. If I use canvas, I don't do this process. Now, what you will need is heat and bond. This one is, I've explained before that mine's quite textured. If I can show you, I'm not sure if the camera is going to pick that texture up at all, but you'll be able to see it on the book cloth that I've made. I also use Abaca tissue paper. Now, this is for mixed media, and it's a really strong tissue paper. But you can use standard tissue paper. It does not have to be this. This has kind of a fabric feel to it, and it actually feels very much like tea bag paper. I'm just going to show you the label. So if you want to pause and have a look at that, you can. And the other thing, so you've got this, you've got your tissue paper, and you've got your heat and bond. So basically, I watched a tutorial, and I've got a feeling it's Paula Lemon. Before I subscribed to Paula Lemon and started watching Paula Lemon, this was, you know, it's at least a year ago, I think, I watched a tutorial on making book cloth, and for some reason, I've got it in my head, it's Paula. So I will try and find that, and if I can, I will link it, because she actually does the ironing and everything. So what I do is I measure the length of my spine. Now I add 1 centimetre, so I go, this was 21 centimetres, and I made it 9 centimetres wide, because you need it big enough to cover the full spine and maybe 1 centimetre or 2 over, to give you this, you know, this overhang here. So what you do is, the way I do it, which is slightly different, I think, to the tutorial I watched many moons ago, is I cut everything bigger than I need. So I would cut my piece of heat and bond, and I would cut my piece of tissue paper. And the first thing I do is I actually iron the tissue paper onto the heat and bond. I don't iron it onto the fabric first. I iron it onto the heat and bond. I have no idea why I started doing that, but that's obviously, I think it's because I wanted the tissue paper to show the texture of the heat and bond rather than the fabric side, because this side is smoother. I think that's probably why, but yeah, I iron on my tissue paper. Obviously it's cut to size, and then I turn it over, I peel off the backing, I put my fabric down, and then what I do is I lay this back over. But you do need to make sure you've got it soft side up. That's going to hit the iron, because the other side is slightly tacky. So I then iron the heat and bond with the tissue already adhered to my fabric, and I do it this way up then. So I iron my tissue paper onto my heat and bond, I turn it over, I peel off the backing, I put down my fabric and put the backing back over the top, and then I iron it. And then you will end up with your book cloth. So this is the piece that I have done. Now, what I then do is, the other reason I do make it bigger than I need is because once you've got this attached to the heat and bond and the tissue paper, you can put this through your paper trimmer. This is a calico. This is tea stained calico. I've inked it as well, but it is calico. It's not the canvas. I probably would not try and put the canvas through my paper trimmer, but this I do. And it doesn't, it actually cuts better than paper, to be fair. It's got quite a thick texture to it, and I'm going to try and show you the texture that is on the back of my heat and bond. I mean, it is smooth, but you can very, very slightly feel the texture, but you can see that texture through the tissue paper. You can get much finer heat and bond. I use the thick one because it works, like I said before, on my faux leather. So this is where it gets tricky and where it's probably going to go wrong for me, because you know, it usually goes right, but I'm on camera. What I do is I decide how far across I want my fabric spine, or, you know, if you're using this as a repair, I decide where I want that, and I take a pencil and I just draw a line on my book. Okay, so now I've got two lines, because I've already done it. Let me just do that, make sure I'm using the right line, because I didn't put that in the right place. Hopefully my head is not in the camera. No, there we go. I want to make sure I'm using that line. Right, so what I do is I don't start from the middle, because if I start from the middle, it always goes horribly wrong. I start from this edge, and what I do is I put glue, and I actually put glue along that line that I've just drawn, because I'm going to make sure my fabric is up against that line, and I just glue up to the crease, and you need to make sure you get those edges. That's the most important thing. So I now line this up and just very, very slightly overlap that line, because what I don't want is that pencil line to show. Now I have, I'm not going to use that plain fold, I'm going to use my nice one. You need to give that a really good burnish down. Okay, so once that, let me just check I'm in frame. Once that is in place, I would then lift this up, take my Fabri-Tac again, and this time I'm going to put the glue into that crease, making sure you get both sides of the crease, making sure you come right to the edge on the top and the bottom, and the crease this side. My Fabri-Tac is a bit tacky. Get rid of that. And then make sure you're putting plenty of glue on that spine. It might look like I'm putting on more than I actually am, because it's not coming out very well. Actually, it's not coming out very well at all. Right, and then what I do is I come across And I just come across about 1 centimetre to start with. I know I'm going to have overlap, but I would rather lift and glue than have too much glue coming across my spine. Right, so this is where you have to work reasonably quickly, but make sure you do it thoroughly. And just push it into those creases. And then come across this edge. Until I'm concentrating and quiet. And this is a bit like when you do your book corners, when you're covering your book. You want to be careful and move fairly quickly, but you do want to make sure you're getting this, you know, down neatly. And the good thing about it is it will move and you will still be able to keep your curved spine on your book. I know it feels like we're kind of pushing this down quite hard, which we are, because what we want to do is we want to make sure we keep the ridges in our spine, but we want to make sure it is absolutely 100% adhered to our book. Now, they're not too far off actually, these. They're not perfectly the same size. The back is going to be, well, it could be the front, very, very slightly bigger. I don't know if you can see. This one comes across very, very slightly further than that one. I'll just get a bit of that glue out of there. You could use a patterned fabric. You do not have to use the heat and bond. You can do this straight on with fabric. It would absolutely be strong enough to repair your spine if you have broken it or cut through it. That's actually a crease in the book. I can feel the book under there. It's not a crease in the fabric. Okay, so we kind of have that, and that's kind of ready to go. What I would do is ink this a bit more, blah blah, you know, make it look a bit nicer. Now, I'm probably going to show you how, well, I actually probably won't. If you are going to use one of these are the Tim Holtz ones, and they're not actually brilliant. I've seen Jessica from I'm a Cool Mum use some much nicer ones of these. I think she may have even said where she got them from. If you're going to use one of these, you need to put this in now. This is when you want to put this in, and all you would use is your awl. Make your hole, pop your brad through, and then what I would do is I would, when the brad comes out the other side, before I do the next step, what I would do is I would take a piece of masking tape, just a square of masking tape. I would put Fabri-Tac, you know, fairly liberally around the back of the brad, and then I would put the Fabri-Tac over that. But what you don't want is you don't want your Fabri-Tac sticking out. You want to make sure it's all adhered. So it might even be worth popping a little bit of Fabri-Tac along the edges of your masking tape. That's just a little tip. So if that's where we are. Now, these bits on the inside, to reinforce the spine properly and to, you know, to make sure you've done a really neat job of it, and also to make it a lot easier to put your signatures in later, you really need to make sure this is, you know, neat and completely adhered down. So any repair work, you need to do it now. Now, I would usually let this dry for a little while before I attempt this, but I fold my cover back, I take my quite large scissors and I trim the excess off as close to that spine hinge as I possibly can. But what you do not want to do at this stage is cut your spine. I know we've got the reinforcement on the outside, but you know, if you can do that without, better still. I then take a little pair of scissors, and any bits that I don't want to get too close to with my big scissors. I just trim, because I want a really nice neat edge. And then I fold it back and do the other side. Something like this is worth doing, you know, slowly and carefully, because it will give your journal a much better finish at the end. Okay, so now what I do is I lift around the corners with my nails and just run my nail along. I mean, you could do it with the end of a pair of scissors, and I just see where I need to repair, because this is gonna, you know, it's gonna take some weight once your journal signatures are in. So you don't want to skimp on the repair work before you do your journal signatures. Before you do any more, you want to make sure this is, you know, in really good condition. That one's well stuck, and this one also needs a little bit of repair. It's quite thick, so it doesn't matter if I'm bending this slightly while I put the glue under. My gloopy glue. It was, I actually had to take the top off this one and swap it with the old one, because where it was so hot, the end of my, where the glue comes out, had actually melted. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. And we're still hot now. We had a couple of days of rain. It was still warm, but we had a couple of days of rain and thunderstorms and whatever ye, and now it's really hot again. But I was listening to the weather this morning, and it said by the end of the week it's going to be really cold for this time of year. So it's just mental, crazy, crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my big scissors again, and I'm just trimming off the excess of that book cloth that we made, or that I made and showed and told you how. So we've now got the outside is kind of complete apart from some inking, and the inside is nice and neat, and we've repaired any damaged parts. So the next thing I use is muslin. You can use paper, you can use Tyvek. I've used Tyvek before. The only thing is, Tyvek is ridiculously expensive, so I've only used Tyvek if I've had something delivered in it. But you can use Tyvek to do this. It doesn't have to be muslin, but I'm going to use muslin. So it doesn't have to be perfect, because this will all get covered up. I'm just overhanging it about between 1 and 2 centimetres, and I'm just going to roughly cut a piece of muslin out. I like to work sideways. I don't know why to do this, but I do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a similar thing to the outside. I'm going to, this time, I'm going right up to the edge, and I'm going along the spine. Whoops, a little bit of I've got a very dry throat all of a sudden. And I'm just going to do this centre. We don't need masses of glue for this one, but you do want to make sure it's stuck well down. And I'm just going to lay that roughly in the centre, and this is my gunky, I do clean it every now and then, but this is my gunky bone folder that I use for thin fabrics that I've used fabric tack with, because You need to push it down with something, but if you use your decent bone folder, it's going to be a gunky bone folder. And they're a bit pants when it comes to burnishing down something neat. Okay, it's dry enough now to use my fingers. And the most important bit is that you get right to the top and right to the bottom and you get in this crease. So that is one side, the centre done. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the inside cover bit. The inside cover bit, that's very technical. Now again, I'd rather not come across far enough with the glue because it's much easier to lift up your little bits with, you know, just to lift up these little bits and just run a bead of glue down there afterwards. So that's one side. I'm going to do the other side. And like I said, you know, you can use Tyvek, you can use paper. Paper is a little bit more tricky, it's not as durable as fabric. You could use a thicker fabric if you wanted to. I like muslin because it's just so easy to work with for this. And having taken apart many an old book, lots of them have this type of cloth on the inside. So, you know, if this kind of fabric was good enough in the 1800s, it's going to be good enough now, isn't it? Make sure, I think we've pretty much stuck this side, maybe a little bit here and there. And my babies are home. Well, my babies were home for last night, and then my gorgeous Sebastian has gone off to camp this morning. I had to take him at 7:30, so he was home for an evening. He had one family meal with us, and now he's gone again. Okay, so you've got a couple of options here. You can cut this flush, you can leave a bit sticking out, and you can just ruffle it like I did this bit here. It's entirely up to you. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do... Ooh, bendy. It's very bendy. Oh. Obviously, you know, working at an angle you don't normally work at. Okay. So we now have the inside of our spine reinforced. So if you did make a little nick in there, this is going to protect that. The other thing I've seen a lot of people do is use duct tape down the middle here. Now, I watched a tutorial when I was about to make my very first journal, and I saw somebody using duct tape, and I did it. And then when you try and glue your spine in, the duct tape was a nightmare. I mean, to be fair, I probably wasn't using Fabri-Tac back then, but I found sticking something to duct tape, because it's very shiny, was really difficult. But like I said, Fabri-Tac would probably do a fantastic job, and I'm sure if I tried it now, it would be a very different story. But that was one journal cover that ended up in the bin when I first started making journals. So that is how to kind of reinforce and repair your spine if you need to. You might want to, once you've got your book cover like this, you can use the technique that I used on my the journal cover that we actually made to size. You could absolutely cover this whole book in fabric in exactly the same way. Did we cover a book? No, we only covered the book cover we made, didn't we? So what I'm going to do is just going to ink a little bit more, because I want this a little bit darker. And I'm using the frayed burlap that I got from the lovely Abby, who's just moved house. How exciting. Wish I could move house. I love my house. It's just things that I would like to move away from. It's very noisy here. Very noisy indeed. Okay. I want this to be quite grungy. So there we have it. That is complete. So I now have 2 of these. I think I might make this one a little bit darker to match this one, but if you just want to check that out. Oh, it's quite dark. I hope the video's light enough. You know, I think this one, maybe one of them I'm going to put an image on the front, one of them I might put a book plate on the front. We'll see. We'll see, but this is going to be vintage themed, and to go along with this I have a new kit which I put in. Oh, whoops! I put into the shop, but I created that kit for this journal because you know, I just think it's going to be a vintage journal. I haven't done a vintage journal for a while. Here are just a few of the images. They're all from the 1800s, mid 1800s. So yeah, this is we're going to play with some of these to create some ephemera for this journal. I will probably get round to putting the signatures together for this one probably later on in the week, because we're going to go back to the other 3 and do some work on those as well, but we are going to start some ephemera. I'm really sorry if this is going to seem a bit disjointed, but I'm not a person who starts a project and works on it from start to finish. That's just not me. I'm not disorganised. I just get, I don't know. I don't watch films because my concentration span won't, you know, I get bored. I get bored. And to stop me losing inspiration and losing motivation on a project, I do a bit and then I move on to another one. And I often work on 2, 3, 4 projects at the same time, and then finish them. And it looks like I'm finishing things really quickly, but I'm not, because they've been started for ages. So I do apologise if it feels a bit like that, but we're creating this hardback journal with a vintage theme, and we're creating the 3, or the other one. Actually, I'm creating 3, but I'm only showing you one, with the nature botanical theme. So those are the journals that we're making in this series, and we will be flitting backwards and forwards between the 2 projects. So I hope that's okay. If it isn't, I'm sorry. You know, wait till it's all finished and watch one project and then watch another project. Don't watch them as I'm putting them up. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to stop blaring now. It's because I heard my daughter get up and I want to go see her. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will be back probably again today, hopefully, with some fun stuff. And thanks again.